Welcome, everybody. Mark Drumheller here with Dave Gleckner. Early Super Bowl preview powered by the Sharp app. If you haven't downloaded the Sharp app yet, the links are below in description. I don't know what you're waiting for. Super Bowl Sunday's around the corner. But, listen, we're hitting every sport in there. College basketball, definitely hot right now. NBA props, our top props articles are cashing, repeatedly. So make sure you hop in there, get all the info, tools, and resources. The links are below at the Sharp app. But, guys, let's talk about the big game. So we're going to be back next week. But right now, we just want to hit things light and, kind of go over what we're seeing, what we're thinking, some of the line movement we saw, and, some of the prop angles that we could attack, some of the overarching things, MVP, passing props, if you like individual players, what you're thinking, the best way to attack it. So, light conversation here. We'll do it for a quick, 10 minutes. You guys have any questions, drop them in the comments. But Dave, let's get started here. Eagles, Chiefs. We knew we would be here last week. We talked about it. We liked the matchup with San Francisco. Everything kind of went according to plan. Probably couldn't have drawn it up that way, knowing that we'd knock out every quarterback they put on the field. But, we got there, and that's really what's important. And now we have, a new challenge here with the Chiefs. Chiefs opened up as slight favorites in a lot of places. Eagles immediately took action, have been, the favorite ever since, 1.5, pretty much consistently across the board. We could see some movement next week, but probably not too much. Probably not going to hit the key number on either side. What are your initial thoughts just on the Eagles being favored here? And, just kind of, thoughts on the matchup of the game?
Well, first off, I need to apologize to everyone. Sorry, the Niners-Bengals that everyone dreamed about isn't coming true. It's the absolute other side.
You got to go back to the Icky Shuffle if you want to see that one.
But that's all I heard at the beginning of the playoffs. And it's okay. So, but I think we got a classic Super Bowl. I mean, you got the Kelsey brothers, right? That's an awesome kind of sidebar to this whole thing. Obviously, you have the connection between Andy Reid and the Philadelphia Eagles and Nick Sirianni and the Kansas City Chiefs. So there's so many dynamics and ways to play about it. And then you even got to look at the black quarterbacks, right? With Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, having that ultimate, battle that's going to be great for not only the league going forward, but the league today. So there's just so many good stories, good storylines. But the first thing you got to say is the Chiefs have been in the Super Bowl 3 times in the past 5 years. They played a really good defense in the San Francisco 49ers, got bailed out late in the fourth quarter. If anyone remembers that game, it was 2010 Niners with about 7 minutes left. And then it got manhandled by a very good Bucs defense, 31-9. So the story really is, can this Eagles defense kind of play the script of those two prior teams and how they were able to figure Mahomes out? 4 interceptions in the Super Bowl in his 2 prior appearances.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting part here. When I look at this game, it's, if you look at the rosters top to bottom, Eagles have the advantage in a lot of places, right? Might be every place except quarterback and tight end. And that's kind of how Kansas City's built, right? They're built to, around Mahomes and Kelsey. That's obviously their bread and butter now that Hill's gone. But, Patrick Mahomes always seems to be the equalizer. But then when you look at the history of at least this Kansas City team, you'd be in the red if you were betting Patrick Mahomes every week. I think he's, 8-11 against the spread, maybe 7-11-1, depending on like what books you use. So Kansas City hasn't been typically great against the spread. One of the fun trends that I saw, and obviously these are just trends, but they're going to be a 6 team. With a losing record against the spread going into the Super Bowl. 4 of the last 5 have lost. So that really hasn't been a winning formula. And I think the reason why you see that is because it's just kind of indication that the market has overvalued them throughout the season and might continuing to be overvaluing them here. And they definitely did when they opened a number because they got immediate, reaction from Eagles bettors kind of moving it back to the Eagles. But I do agree with you. I do think that the defense is going to be the story. It's, can the Eagles defense disrupt Mahomes? Obviously, their offensive line's a lot better than what it was in that game against Tampa, but the Eagles defensive line is a problem for everybody. We saw that last week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, your point well taken on the kind of overvalue of the Chiefs in the market. This is actually the first time Patrick Mahomes has been underdog in the playoffs. The first, I think 15 games, something like that. Don't hold me to the exact number of games. So I think we're finally caught up. The market kind of has shifted a little bit. And obviously the early money, I think, was sharp money that moved it to one side. And then we're also seeing money move on the total now, right? we're seeing it move up to 50.5. I think it opened at 49. So that's a pretty significant shift in numbers there, which kind of tells you that be damned about the defenses. They think this one's going to be a little bit of a shootout. And I could see it. I think the Eagles have struggled a little bit defensively versus some of the more vertical passing games. That's where I really question what Kansas City can do in the vertical essence. But, a Dallas team was able to move the ball a little bit through the air. The last time in Dallas against the Eagles, Dak had a good game. So there have been some instances where that verticality, like the 3rd and 30 was a killer, remember? But they were running, the TYs, the CDs, the Gallups, and they were able to get a little more vertical. I don't know if KC can do that.
Yeah, see, I think in that Dallas game, I don't throw it away because, I do think that it does, open up some eyes with certain things. But, like we had Maddox get hurt in the slot, and they really just stuck CeeDee Lamb in the slot and just kind of buried us there. And I don't know if, Kansas City is going to be able to duplicate that, but they're going to score points. I mean, they do have Mahomes, they do have Kelsey. So to think that, the Eagles defense is just going to shut them out is, obviously crazy, but but they can force turnovers. And I think that could be a big thing. Like if I'm looking at, betting this live or, like I'm, going to end up on the Eagles in this matchup. I think anybody that's kind of listened to us can figure out where we're going to be. But I think turnovers could be a big part of it. Like Kansas City struggled with turnovers all year. And that's where I think the Eagles can get an advantage in this one is if they can force Mahomes into those turnovers, get to the quarterback, cause fumbles, strip sacks, like all that stuff. Those are game-changing things, and especially with the Eagles and their propensity to get out early and score in the first half, number one scoring first half team in the NFL this year. So I think that's really what you could see if you're looking at it from the Eagles side.
Yeah, I agree. Now let's look at from the offensive side of the ball. We talked defensively how the Eagles will need to pressure Patrick Mahomes, though I will say he is better under pressure. That's more in the blitz realm, though. I mean, creating natural pressure against him, I think, is the key for this Eagles team and creating it with a 4 to 5 man rush. But looking on the other side of the ball, Mark, it's been all rushing all postseason for the Eagles. I think 7 rushing touchdowns. They just haven't needed to do much in the passing game. Last week, I think Devontae led the team with 28 yards receiving. It's kind of like silly to think about, but the passing game needs to show up this week if you're on the Eagles side because, lo and behold, they'll be able to dominate the line of scrimmage and they will be able to run the ball. But where Kansas City gets a little goofy is they love these blitzes, right? And if we're not, on top of those blitz schemes, we won't be able to move the ball through there. So I think the key to this game really is Hurts's ability to see the blitz, opt out, hot read, and move the ball through there because there will be times we need to convert in the air. And I think that's going to be a big key for Hurts.
Yeah, and especially in the middle of the field. I think that's where Kansas City really struggles, 31st in passing DVOA over the middle of the field. So only 32 teams in the league. 31's not good, right? So, and that's an area where Hurts has really progressed this year. Is last year you didn't see too much of him thrown over the middle of the field. Everything was kind of to the boundary. But this year he has utilized the middle of the field great. So that's an area that they could attack. We'll keep that in mind. We talk about props in a little bit, but I agree with you 100%. I think the Eagles will be able to have success running the ball, but they're going to have to be multi-dimensional. They can't just rely on that rushing attack because they are going to – Spags is going to do run blitzes and try and do everything he can to shut that down because honestly, Kansas City's not physical enough to just sit there and play it straight up. So they're going to have to, try and clog those run fits. But I do think it's going to be a big day for the Eagles rushing attack. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the props you might have your eye on, whether it's the Kansas City side or the Philadelphia side, over unders. A lot of these yardage props are kind of, get a little bit inflated, right? Bettors get the bet into them 2 weeks. Everybody wants to see points and overs. When we talked about the total, that number's moving up to 50.5. Last 4 Super Bowls have been under. So that could be like a little bit of a contrarian play, right? Like how many unders we going to have in a row, right? Eventually, the market catches up, and it's probably part of why that number was built in so low. They might have expected some more under money coming in, but we'll see kind of where that lands. I'm in the total, I'm not sure. I kind of see it both ways. I think we could see points if it's a game where the Eagles defense is really dominant, like, Tampa was in that previous Super Bowl, then I think that leans to the under. But if it's not and Mahomes is scoring points, I think, we could see it going to the over. But when we look at, one of the some of the props I was looking at is, one that's really popular is Kenneth Gainwell on the Eagles, right? A lot of
Yes.
people have seen him kind of get a bigger piece of the pie from the rushing perspective. His yardage total for rushing has kind of moved. It was initially, I think, around 16 and a half. Now it's up to like 18, 19 in some places. Is that an area that you're looking at? I even think Miles Sanders, even though his numbers are kind of high now, like in the 50s, like I think it's going to be a big rushing day for the Eagles.
Yeah, I actually listen. I love Gainwell. I think he's definitely trending towards taking over the role as the lead back next season. Miles Sanders on his last year of his contract, so I get it. But let's also understand Gainwell's been getting a lot of those yards late in the game, right? And that's been in blowout situations. Outscoring teams 69-14 hasn't been seen in this modern era NFL playoffs. So as much as I kind of like his, I actually like Sanders a lot more. You mentioned it. I think Sanders is in line for a big haul this week. 11 for 42 against San Fran, and I think almost all those carries were in the first half. I think he had 2 in the second half. So you keep this game closer, and then we go back to the other game, 17 for 90 against the Giants. So I think 57 is very gettable for Miles Sanders. That's where he's sitting at today on DraftKings. I like that a little bit more than Gainwell. I think it's a game that, hey, it's going to be close. I think the horses are going to have to be used. I don't think they're going to use the gimmicks, and not to say anything bad about Gainwell, but I just feel like that he's more of an end of the game blowout type of regime mode.
Yeah.
And plus he gets his carries inside the 10 a lot, right? So it's not like he can break them for long.
That's true. That's true. Very true. But yeah, I like Sanders too. KC does an awful job at contacting running backs at or before the line of scrimmage, third worst in the NFL. And Miles Sanders averages 6.7 yards per carry when he's not touched until the line of scrimmage. So I think all that kind of sets up. We saw the Eagles' offensive line blow San Francisco off the ball. They were, I think, number 2 in rushing DVOA coming in. This Chiefs team is outside of the top 20. They're not anywhere near that. So I think the big boys up front are going to be able to get the job done. Any other players kind of sticking out? I know A.J. Brown is a guy I expect to have a huge game, but I think there might be better value on targeting him from like an anytime touchdown perspective.
Yeah.
KC plays a lot of press coverage, so in the red zone, he's going to be able to get loose. Then yardage, because the one thing the KC defense does do well is they do a good job of limiting explosive plays, and they do a good job of keeping everything in front of them. So I think they're going to make a concerted effort to get Brown the ball, but I just don't know if it's going to result in all those yards.
Yeah, I agree. I think 72. Maybe I'm still feeling burned from last week, but I think I'm off the yards with AJ. I like the anytime touchdown talk, though. I like Devontae over the 61.5. And we saw last week against the Chiefs that T. Higgins was more the focus, and that happened again last year in the AFC Championship game. They seem to really do a good job at clouding over the number ones, and the number twos have seemed to get a little bit more yards against them. So I kind of like Higgins was 6 for 83 last week, and he kind of reminds me a lot of Devontae. So I like that, and I will tell you, I do like Kelsey on the Chiefs side. I know it's going to be popular, but I'm going to have to figure out where to bet. I still think the 78 yards is live. They're going to need to move the ball through there somehow, some way. And the doubts are now, it looks like Hardman's out. I don't know what type of juju they'll have. It could be 14 catches to Kelsey, 5 yards at a pop, but I think he gets to 78 somehow, some way.
I agree with you. And I think it's a great point on Kelsey because he is the offense. And when you look at the Eagles, we talked about their first half scoring. So I expect them to get out to a big lead here. I like that. I mean, you can get halftime. You can get like money line at -120 Eagles first half. So that's one I definitely have my eyes on. Kansas City defense 23rd in DVOA in the first half. So, everything kind of leans again towards the Eagles getting out to a big lead. And that means KC playing from behind, less Pacheco, more Kelsey, right? Because they're going to go to Kelsey. I mean, it's a Super Bowl. They're not going to be, whipping around the Tony and these other guys. So, I think I agree with you there as far as Kelsey. I think that makes a lot of sense. Anyone else on the Kansas City side from like a prop perspective that you might have your eye on that think could have a big game out of nowhere?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it might be McKinnon out of the backfield. He's been really quiet the first 2 playoff games. I think, versus an Eagles team that is pretty speedy, right, defensively, and they are lengthy at their defensive line position, and they've gotten better at defending the run since Jordan Davis has been back. I think they might go to more of a scat back in this game. I don't think they'll go full power mode with Pacheco. Plus, I think they can trust the blocking a little more with McKinnon back there. So I think we're going to see some McKinnon props pop, I should say.
Yeah.
And I like the receiving one at 22.
It's an excellent point because they're going to need somebody in there to help with that pass rush. So they're going to need pass protection. It's going to be pretty big at the running back position. Not going to be able to afford to get those guys off the field. Before we get over to MVP and get out of here, Dave, let's talk about the quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts, 242.5 passing. Patrick Mahomes, 289.5. Mahomes, juice to the over. And again, that might be because of the game script that we talk about. Eagles in front early. Patrick Mahomes trying to work some magic against this Eagles pass rush. Listen, if I'm an Eagles backer, I don't want to see this game being close at the end in the fourth quarter. So hopefully, the Eagles can get them out of there early. But I think that's why you're seeing, Mahomes yards, right? Kind of get a lot of the action. Do you agree with that? I mean, and if there was one quarterback more likely to go over, do you think it would be Mahomes? Because I kind of do. Like, even at 242, again, like, I think the Eagles rushing game is going to be a big part of this. And two things are going to happen. I think they're going to get out to a lead. And if the defense is doing its job and giving them short fields, it's going to be more rushing. And if it's a close game, then you'll see Hurts kind of like battle it back. But I don't know, man. I would probably lean, if I was going to take an over here out of these two passers, I would probably lean Mahomes as well.
Yeah, I would. I will say I won't play Mahomes over. And
I do like both unders, though, to be honest.
That's where
yeah.
That's where I was going. I won't play Mahomes over at all. And one of my big reasons for that is, say what you want, but the Eagles knocked out two quarterbacks in the last game. And Mahomes is coming in on one ankle. And I mean, I'm not saying anybody's going after that kind of stuff, but all it takes is that pressure and one hit like they did against Purdy or Johnson. And, you got Henny for a little bit again. And any series with Henny takes that over way out of play. So I just don't feel good enough betting an injured quarterbacks over when it's close to 300. I think the Eagles allowed one or two 300-yard passers all year. They're number one pass defense in the league. So I'm just not going to bet it, but I'm not going to bet the under either because they're no fun.
I agree. And, I probably won't be on any of the passing yard props. But, another thing to keep in mind, too, is that, we talked about KC's defense and their ability to kind of limit big plays, right? And make you kind of work down the field. And we saw the Eagles in that situation against San Francisco early in the conference championship game, right? They had the, fourth down pass. I think it was over the middle to A.J. Brown, or it might have been a third down pass. And then the fourth down pass to Devonta Smith, catch, no catch, whatever you want to call it. Technically not a catch, I guess, but, we got one there. But, regardless, we saw the Eagles being able to perform and kind of work the ball down the field and chew up some clock. So if Kansas City is really working at limiting explosive plays, Eagles, second most explosive pass plays in the NFL behind Kansas City. So we have two offenses that are great at getting explosive plays, two defenses really good at taking them away. That could lead to a lot of longer drives, and that just kind of leans towards some of the unders here.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, with Kansas City, I think a lot of their explosive plays come when he's freestyling a little bit. And I just don't know how much he can freestyle in this, in this type of pressure and the type of injury he's
going to have bodies coming at him, man. That's the thing is, like, the Eagles, 4 guys with 11 or more sacks, in the regular season, not even counting all the sacks they piled up in the postseason. So it's not like it's one guy. Like, they have guys coming everywhere at you, and it's going to be real exciting stuff. But before we get out of here, Dave, played a little bit A.J. Brown for MVP. I think it's a possibility that he gets loose. I played it last week at the number of 35-1. Right now, you're seeing around 14-1. I don't love that number as much, but I do think that it's a very good chance it could be a non-quarterback here. 6 of the last 10 were quarterbacks, but I think over the last 20 years, maybe 10 were non-quarterbacks. But it's more likely it happens a lot more than I think people think. People automatically assume to the quarterback. Not saying the quarterbacks can't win. Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes have the mobility to really rack up good total yards. So that's something that could come and play, especially on the Hurts side. Like, if he gets 100 yards rushing here, I think he'll have it wrapped up. But anyone that you're looking at in the MVP, any good angles there before we get out of here?
So that's my favorite from the Eagles side. It's down to 10-1. 10-1 in some areas. Like, it's been shooting down. And I do think
I don't know if I like it this low at 10-1. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
So then I'll give you two long shots that I think, from the Eagles' perspective, hasn't happened in quite some time. But let's go with Hassan Reddick at 35-1, the
I think that's a good
NFL
one.
sack leader, 19.5. He's just an absolute disruptor. And if he disrupts and he creates one sack, fumble, and recovery, we could be on our way to a 35-1. And KC side, I think you got value at Kelsey at 10-1. I think if anybody's going to sit there, we talked about volume of catches. If he gets those volume of catches and pops 2 TDs, he'll take the trophy over Mahomes for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Love those two. And another thing too is, we talk about, is it a defensive player? Sometimes the first guy that gets there doesn't get the sacks. And
Right.
so you could see a guy like Fletcher Cox, and end up with like 3 sacks. You know what I mean? Because, Reddick's getting them out of the pocket. Mahomes is trying to be mobile, and there's Cox, all over him. Right. So you could see something like that. Maybe a guy like that's worth a shot. But I do think there is a chance that the Eagles defense wrecks this game. And really it looks a little bit more like the Tampa Super Bowl, than I think what people are expecting here out of Mahomes, just because, I don't know if he has the weapons, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Listen, we'll be back next week to break it down and give you all our bets. But that's some of the spots that we are leaning at. In the meantime, guys, make sure you download the Sharp app. Get into Discord. The links are below. College basketball picks, NHL picks. Everything's popping off every night from our professional handicappers. So get involved in our community. The Discord's a ton of fun. But until next week, I'm Mark Drumheller here with Dave Gleckner. We'll see you then to get you ready for the big game.
Hey, no yellow next week for you.
That's right.